All right, in case you hadn't noticed, an election just happened here in the United States, and it's going to change some things. It's not the time to put your head in the sand and say, oh, well, if I just hunker down for a few years, it's not going to be all okay. It's not going to be all okay. So one aspect of how to survive, how to find a new way forward in science. So welcome to the Sci-Foundry podcast where science rules. Yes, still, despite all of the anti-science BS out there, science still rules, at least the process of science, not necessarily some of the beliefs of science. And we'll talk about that in this podcast and how we can start moving forward, how we can build a foundation for science, for research, for the future, and not succumb to some of the stupid mistakes that we have made in the past that have helped us land in this position. And one of those mistakes that I want to talk about on this one that affects our grant proposals, but affects politics, it's microcosm, macrocosm, it affects both, is hubris, scientific hubris. We have a lot of that. We succumb to that as highly trained individuals who've been trained in all different areas of science to, quote, know, whatever it is that we're supposed to know in our fields, the facts of our fields. It gives us this sense of like, well, we're somehow better than all those people who haven't been trained in this. We know more than they know. And that hubris is a problem. It's a problem in elections. And again, it's a problem for ourselves. I popped on YouTube post-election and was just looking at a video by a guy, James Carville, who was a Democratic strategist analyzing what had happened. And somehow I got sucked into those comments in the comments section. And that's like one of the worst things ever to do, right? But I made the mistake. I got sucked into the comments and I was reading through. And I'm going to try through the miracles of modern technology to show you the comments that really set me off. It was basically the only way, there was a person saying in the comments, the only way to win elections is to play to the stupids. To play to the stupids. And that simple phrase, to play to the stupids, it speaks volumes about the attitude of that particular side of the political spectrum, which tends, on average, to be more aligned with science and research than the other side. It's not a universal alignment, but it's a relatively strong alignment. And there is this problem that we think because they believe different than us, they are therefore dumb. They are therefore uneducated. I grew up in a family where it was very much frowned upon to have anything other than the conventional scientific view. My father had broken away from a particular strong, dominant religion where he grew up, and so he was very anti that religion. And yet, he taught me the religion of science. Now, that sounds weird, doesn't it? To be taught the religion of science? But he had replaced one religion with another religion. He hadn't truly moved away from religion altogether, because science itself, like science with a lowercase s, is just a process of exploration. It is a process of understanding how our world, how our bodies, how our universe works. What's behind this? What's going on? Science, lowercase s, process. Science, uppercase s, is a whole slew of beliefs that one can adopt and say, I am science. And is that really any different than being part of some religion that says we know the truth because it's been revealed to us by a particular book? I mean, is that really different? Think about this case. Think about this case of, the Enterprise is going along through space, the old one, the one from the 1970s Enterprise, which was 20, what I forget the actual year. Okay, so Scotty, hey Captain, there's something wrong with the warp drive. Like it's been taken over by this dark matter stuff, and it seems like it's like 95% of the warp drive is now this dark matter stuff. And the captain, Jim, is like, "Oh, it's okay, Scotty. Just ignore it. We'll keep going." Right? Science does stuff like that. Science with a capital S does stuff like that. What am I referring to? Well, dark matter. Okay, so there are all these people out there that I read. Like, I read a lot of science fiction and science fact, as far as we know, quote, fact. I read a lot of that. And it's a very common thing to say, our universe is going to end in a heat death, or our universe is going to end this way or that way. And people make all sorts of assumptions based upon, oh, this is what's going to happen. And it's pretty bizarre to make all of these assumptions about what's going to happen 50 billion or 100 billion years in the future, in some projected future, based upon this tiny microcosm, the tiniest speck of the tiniest microcosm of the universe, our observations of what's going on in the immediate surroundings around us. And we're projecting forward 50 billion years into the future. And we admittedly don't even know what 95% of the content of our universe actually is. We have no clue what it is. We can't measure it. We can't detect it. And yet we make all of these assumptions and project forward. We spin out fantasies based upon like these tiny littlest glimpses of truth that we get through our science. Yes, we've made a lot of progress in science, and that's a good thing. But come on, people. Like, it's way overreaching to say that we actually know what the flip is going on in our universe. And it's hubris to think that we have it all figured out. It is the most ridiculous thing ever. And that hubris is what pisses people off and alienates the rest of the population from scientists and from research, because they're tired of the hubris. They're tired of being told, well, you have to have some vaccine because we believe it works. Now, by the way, I've been vaccinated, so I'm not an anti-vaxxer. Please don't lump me in with those people, because I think both sides are flippin' crazy. Both sides are crazy. It's hubris on all sides that is the problem here. Because if we have a belief system that is different than somebody else's belief system, and then we tell them our belief system is right, we are right because we are educated. No, we don't know if we're right. We don't know the long-term effects of things like vaccines on our immune system. Again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I have been vaccinated recently, okay? But like, we have to admit, we don't flippin' know what long-term effects this is going to have. Now, short-term data says it's probably better to be vaccinated than not vaccinated. And this video isn't all about vaccinations. I'm just using this as an example. So let's not get into vaccine wars about this. Okay? It's not the point. The point is, it's hubris for us to say, well, you have a different belief system, but you're ignorant. So therefore, you have to do what I say. But that is what has been happening in society for the last, since science really became a big thing, especially in the post-World War II era. Since that time, this sort of scientific worldview has dominated. It has dominated our politics. It has dominated our society. And we are seeing backlash against that. But I don't think it's actually backlash against the fundamental idea of doing science as an exploration. If you're wondering, how is it that somebody named Musk could be the person who has developed electric cars and, is working on rockets to go to Mars and all of that, but at the same time sits there and tears down universities and says that universities have fallen prey to the woke mind virus, and he wants to get rid of them, right? Which, by the way, is a dangerous thing that we should be concerned about, because he's going to be in some power, right? So why is it that somebody who's clearly, in certain ways at least, very, very smart is dismissing all of what we do? Why is that? Well, maybe it's because we've been dismissing him and many of the other people on that particular sort of side or that particular way of thinking for so many decades. We've been dismissing them, we've been ignoring them, we've been telling them they're stupid and belittling them, that they're frickin' fed up and now they're in charge. Hey, go figure. Wonderful situation we've put ourselves in. It never works to have hubris in the long term. It never works, ever. Now, it may be the case that moving forward, that there will be a small number of scientific leaders who have hubris, who get in with, the people in power and manage to use getting in with the people in power to leverage resources, funding, that kind of stuff that they want and they need. So in that narrow slice of cases, hubris will work. It will work because they're in with the people in power. For the rest of us, hubris will not work. It will not work. So what will work instead? What will work instead is actually understanding, being bigger, being better than they are, and understanding that there are different points of view. There are different points of view on this planet. And acknowledging that we don't have a lock on the correct point of view. We don't know what the actual truth of really almost anything is. I mean, we have data and we have some things that we know more than others and some things seem better than others, right? That's all we know. We should be okay with that, right? But we're not right now. So getting to a point where we understand that there are multiple points of view on the planet and that we're not going to condescend, but we're going to engage with those people as human beings and actually do a better job of communicating with them why our point of view is potentially important to consider, why it might be valid, why it might actually help them and contribute to their lives being better. When you go to somebody and say, hey, I've got a vaccine for you in this thing, and it's this big needle sticking out. It's going to make you feel better. Here, you have to take this. Like, if you're on the receiving end of somebody saying, you have to do this, and if you say, well, no, I'm not sure. And they say, well, no, just listen. I'm the authority. Come on, do this. And they're walking up to you with a needle or whatever it is, like some kind of probe-looking thing. Like, let's take the vaccine thing out of it because I know that's so loaded that people are probably already going to be like in YouTube comments, blah, 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 vaccine this, vaccine that. This is not about vaccines, people. Just to be clear. It's about the more fundamental problem. So let's talk about probes instead, some kind of alien probe-looking device. Hey, I've got this probe and it's going to make you feel so much better. Come on, you need to do this. And this person's walking up to you with this probe and they're ready to do something to you with this probe. And you're like, what does that do? Oh, no. Just believe me. It's okay. I'm very educated in this. I know what this probe does. It's going to make you feel better. But what is it? No, you've got to take this probe. It's mandatory, right? And you're like, I would be running the flip out of the room, out of the city. I would be out of there, and you would too. Every human being would, right? Because I don't believe in this probe. Unless I have a particular worldview that, somebody sent me the schematics of the probe now, and it explains how the probe works, and it aligns with my view of how the world works. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, that does seem like that might actually make me stronger and faster and better and more wonderful and all of those things. So, yeah, I guess you can go ahead and use that probe on me, right? Okay. So our willingness as human beings to accept something is based upon our belief systems. And what we do, as what most of the scientific community and the academic community has done for decades, is if somebody doesn't agree with us, we take the sledgehammer and we bring out the sledgehammer and say, you are wrong, and I'm going to hit you with my sledgehammer of truth, of shame, of woe, of whatever. I'm going to hit you with my sledgehammer if you don't agree with me. What bullshit is that? Come on, people. Come on. That's no way to win people over or convince people of anything. There are so many people. I was talking to somebody who's at a major academic institution who said their students are big Musk fans. Why are so many of that person's students Musk fans, Elon Musk fans? Well, Musk invites them to dream big. Hey people, we're going to Mars. Now you may disagree or you may agree with that. Doesn't matter. The fact is, Musk is winning right now. Why is Musk winning right now? Because he's inspiring people to something. To this idea of like, we could go to Mars. We could be awesome. We could recapture our sense of glory and power and the ability to actually make things happen rather than, having sent people to the moon in the 1960s, like back around when I was born, and then just kind of everything's fizzling out in politics and this and that and the other thing. No, let's recapture our glory as a species. Let's go do something. It's that kind of energy that inspires youth because they haven't been beaten down by the sledgehammer quite yet to say, well, no, it's all too hard and it's all too difficult and it's all too, we've got considerations and concerns and objections and worries and blah, blah, blah this and blah, blah, blah that. I'm speaking kind of like a grant reviewer right now, a common grant reviewer. I mean, seriously, that's how we've become as a scientific community. People, wake up. This is not attracting friends. This is not attracting anything to our cause, to the cause of science, as a thing that's actually important for humanity moving forward. Open-minded exploration of what our world is about. That's an awesome thing. That's why I say science rocks. Science with a lowercase s. Science rocks. But not science with the uppercase S of we know everything and we are right. We are the religion of science and we're going to shove it down your throat. Because now, we've been doing that, but now the backlash is so strong that we're not going to be able to do that anymore. So we must, at this point in history, must find the alternative. The people who do not are either going to be those few who somehow get in with, the people in power, and there will be probably a few of those, or we can shrink down and just hunker down, and that is not a winning strategy, or we can actually do something different. We can be better people. We can step up and understand that true science is open-minded science with a lowercase s. And if that somebody comes to us, comes into our sphere with a different point of view, that a different belief system, that we don't dismiss them right away, that we don't shoot them down right away and say, you're wrong, you are invalid, I know because I've got all these 10 degrees hanging on the wall there. No, that's not going to work. It's proven. What happened in the U.S. election proved that facts, just shoving facts down people's throats, hey, the economy is better. Why aren't you voting for us? It doesn't work. People don't care. But people do respond to you being a reasonable human and talking to them and understanding their point of view and perhaps getting the chance to share your point of view in a conversation with them because you have engaged, you have listened to them, you have understood them and their point of view, and that by natural reciprocity, they might actually do the same for you just a little bit. It might give you a chance to speak up. It might give you a chance to advocate. Now I'll talk about the second factor in this. I mean, the first, again, is just having that real human conversation with people. The second factor in this is us actually doing better communication as scientists, as researchers, just in general, about what we do and why it's important. Better communication. I'll talk about that more, and I'll talk about other survival strategies, not just survival, but thriving, finding a new way forward that's going to make the whole enterprise better and stronger than it ever was. But we got to make some changes, people. And again, one of those is better communication. Our communication is so horrible because we don't understand that there are other humans on the end of the conversation, and we just want to shove data down their throats. It doesn't work. It doesn't work in grant proposals. This is one of the things that over hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands of proposals that I've looked at and given feedback on over the last 14 years to get people millions and millions of dollars in funding from the NIH, helping them to get many tens of millions of dollars in funding from the NIH. One of the main things that I do is do not try to shove your data down other people's throats. It doesn't work. That's a hubris. That is another expression of hubris. Often it comes from fear, and fear can breed hubris. Hubris is like the wall that we put up because inside we're shriveling little fearful people of they might reject me. So then we have this hubris of, well, in order to prevent that, I'll just shove data down their throats and they can't deny it. They can't ignore it because I give them so many data, so many facts, so many acronyms that obviously they're going to see that I've got something. But they see through the ruse. They know when you're just shoving confusing data and facts down their throats, they're they just get pissed off. They get angry. They get frustrated. And then what do? They reject you. That's what happens in grant proposals. And I've been seeing it over and over again, that this is our tendency. The vast majority of people I work with, vast majority, I would say 97+%, are people who put way too many facts in, way too much jargon in, and there's just this hubris that goes into the grant proposals, and it's almost like I'm a hubris remover, trying to get them to get the frickin' hubris out of the proposals so that the people on the receiving end can receive just a clear and compelling story of why this science is actually important, why this science that's being proposed is actually going to make an impact on the community. That's all. Remove the hubris and just tell a good story about the science. Why is that so hard to understand? Well, because we've all been trained from the ground up to have this kind of hubris. And we bring it into all of our interactions with people. And this, people, is why there's so much anti-science on the planet, and anti-science just got a very big boost. There's this guy named RFK RFK? Yeah, I think that's I don't pay attention to, I tune him out for the most part because, again, I'm not an anti-vaxxer, but I also am not crazy on the other side either. I'm just let's see what the data says and make our best decision based upon the current data we have. Okay, so that's where I stand on the vaccine thing. Okay, so anyway, but there is an anti-science person now who's going to be high up in the new administration here in the United States. Anti-science is winning. We have to change, folks, and it starts with getting rid of the hubris. Dropping the hubris and starting to be real people who actually are able to communicate clearly about what we do and why that is valuable and why that is going to help the people around us, the society at large, and the country and all of that. We have to drop the hubris and start communicating better. And I think I'll leave it on that message for today. I have a lot more to share with you. in some sense, this is pent up for me for years because one of the reasons that I left my academic position, I left my tenured post at UNC Chapel Hill, is because I couldn't stand the frickin' hubris anymore. It was driving me bonkers. I'm like, come on, people. There's so much we don't know, and yet we sit here and, act all like hubrisy, thinking, as if we know everything. I'll finish with one story. Okay, so I was at a cancer meeting organized by the National Institutes of Health with leaders in the cancer field. And somehow they managed to invite me, even though I was more like bioinformatics and proteomics, but whatever. So I was there, and there was this discussion. So somebody at some point mentioned that we should not have used all of the money to send people to the moon that we did, the moon landing. If we had only spent that money on cancer, we probably would have had a cure for cancer. And that sat wrong with me. I thought about it for a little while. And I'm like, okay, there's some flawed assumptions here. And one of the flawed assumptions is that actually inspiring people is a bad or wrong thing, that wanting to explore our universe is a bad or wrong thing, or that just that extra money that we spent on that would have somehow magically materialized a cure for cancer. It's sort of like the people who believe that if we just throw more processing units at AI, it will suddenly become sentient. No, it's ridiculous. Like, to just think that more is suddenly somehow better or going to cause something magical to happen. So I got up in my talk that I was invited to do, it was just 10 minutes or something, and said, actually, it's an interesting comment that my fellow so-and-so made about it would have been better to spend this money on cancer rather than the moon landing. I'm like, here's a population graph of the world, and it's an exponential curve going up. And I'm like, this is kind of a problem. Maybe what we actually need to do is send a lot more people into space and not cure cancer, because it might help level out this population curve that is actually the source of many of our problems right now in the world, right? I mean, so different point of view. And I think it kind of landed on people are like, who is this crazy person? What's going on with that? Right? Different point of view. It all is based upon your assumptions, your beliefs, and other people have different points of view. It would do us well to understand that. It helps you in your grant proposals, and it will help us find the way forward in science, making science relevant, making science important. I'm not going to use the word again because it sounds too much like another term that's used out there, right? Making science relevant, making science important. That's what I want all of us to be on board with. And it will benefit us in the more immediate things like our grant proposals too. It's a win-win. So please join me in dropping the hubris. It's not necessary. It's not useful. It's not helpful. I'll talk to you soon. This is Morgan Giddings for Sci Foundry, signing out.